So, today we're going to be discussing interesting game design. Okay, so, first of all, why do interesting game design? Why bother? All the money is in making clones. I'll just make Bejeweled again. Next thing you know, I'm making tons of money, and I don't even need to do work. Like, why bother? Well, there's a reason why you should do good game design, and it's from an economic perspective. From GDC, I saw Daniel Cook's talk on stop wasting your time in the clone factories, and he gave this curve that's pretty, like, this is a crude representation of it, but the basic idea is that in the beginning of the genre, when you make one, it starts in a growth period, and then it continues to grow as it gains popularity until it hits the mainstream. And then eventually it goes into decline, and then it keeps decreasing until it becomes a niche. So what you want to do is start the curve and get it growing and go into a new market. And then what you want to do there is establish yourself as the genre king. So even though there are tons of Bejeweled clones, PopCap is still kind of on top because they've established themselves as the go-to people for that genre. So that's what you want to do when you create a genre. Sometimes it doesn't work out like that, but if you can do it, then you'll reap the benefits. So another problem is that there's crowded market competition. When you work in a field that's already populated by other people copying your game, and then it's kind of hard to get ahead of everyone, so it's disadvantageous. You want to be the head of your field. You want to be the top. You don't want to just be another one in the crowd and just get lost in the shuffle. And it also helps the industry. If you make uninteresting games and just find yourself making clones and stuff, then it's not just you that suffers, or not just the people that suffers, it's everyone that suffers. Like, you'll find that players stop buying, nobody wants to play the same games over and over, and you'll stop selling because you don't have any buyers left. So you still want to help the industry while helping yourself at the same time, otherwise you're going to cause yourself some problems while causing some problems in a more systemic manner as well. And you also help yourself. You can go to your friends and say, I made this, I invented a genre. No one else in the world has made this ever before. I've created something that I'm proud of, and you're not making the same thing over and over again, because boring games are boring. You don't want to just make another clone of something, because then people will just say, oh, you just copied them, and you're going to be seen as a hack in some ways. So you don't want to do that. You want to work on projects that you're excited about, and projects that you like, and that making clones of games is bad business, and it's a drain on your creative soul. I know some people don't care about that, but you want to do that. So what do big developers do for inspiration? We'll look at Shigeru Miyamoto, known for making Mario, Donkey Kong, Legend of Zelda, Star Fox, countless other games, and he's always trying to do something that captures his interest and uses that as inspiration for his games. So I've heard of this example of something he does when he's just going about the Nintendo headquarters. Apparently, I heard from Koichi Hayashida's talk at GDC on when he was working on when he was talking about Super Mario 3D Land, and he said Shigeru Miyamoto carries a ruler around with him, and sometimes he's not sure how he's doing that day. So what he does is he looks at an object in front of him, say his desk, and he says, I think that desk is about 4 feet or something. So he goes over to measure it, and then if he's right or close enough, then he decides he's having a good day. So so it's all about, like, it's weird, but it's all about having a playful attitude towards your surroundings. Like, you can make a game out of almost anything, and you could play all the time if you just, keep a sincere attitude about what you can do with your world. So, what's Hi, you just came in on my talk on how you can be a great game designer. As a child, Miyamoto liked to explore the mountainside. And one day, during his explorations, he found a cave. And he wasn't really sure if it was safe or not. So he didn't want to go inside it. And then he just left. But he couldn't get the idea of the cave out of his mind. He had that thought that, what if I were to go in? What sort of mysteries can lie within that cave? So he came back later that summer with a lantern and explored it, and he was quite nervous about it, but it offered something priceless to him, that sense of wonderment when he was exploring something that's probably never touched before by human hands and never seen before. And when he was looking through the dark passages, he realized that there were more caverns to be held inside, more things to explore. And he just wanted to keep going further and further. So this led to inspiration for him for games like Legend of Zelda, where he wanted the player to experience that sense of wonderment he felt as a child. So, Legend of Zelda. So, he's not doing that anymore. He's old now. Well, still, you could say he's young, but he's still young at heart, anyway. Because he's still doing things like planting gardens, learning guitar, playing with his dog. And in case you didn't realize what this applies to, it applies to 3 games he's made. Pikmin, Wii Music, Nintendogs. All these things are just drawn from his personal experiences and what he does in his daily life. And you have to so the lesson there is that you can draw inspiration from every single thing around you. All the activities you do, that sense of pleasure you feel doing whatever you do, you can put that into your games as well. And he's gotten tired of making the same old games over and over again, Mario, Zelda, and he's actually handing them off to his other teams because he wants to move forward and work on future projects. You have to keep that attitude too. If you just work on the same things over and over again, you're going to find yourself kind of drained, and you've explored a lot of possibilities. And that's a good attitude to have. And that attitude is not just held by Shigeru Miyamoto, but it's also held by Wright. He was the pioneer behind games such as The Sims and SimCity. He was the head of SimCities for a while. SimCities for a while? Is that probably plural for games? Anyway, he was the head of the SimCities projects for a while, but he felt that it was kind of too draining for him. Like, he wanted to move forward creatively. He didn't want to just make the same things over and over again, iterating, maybe doing only like 10% difference or 20% difference. He wanted to make completely different games from what he was doing. And he handed off his projects to his teams, which he felt were in good hands because they seemed to know what they were doing. And he always wanted to explore new fields because he loves doing lots of different things, as I will explain. As a child, he liked to build model planes and model ships. The reason why he loved doing that is because with these models, you can explore a world that you wouldn't explore in your normal life. You can fly through the sky, you can sail the 7 seas, and you can appreciate what it's like to be in a different place than where you are now. And he wanted to capture that, but he wasn't sure how. So he just continued on with his life until he found something for the Apple II called Pinball Construction Set. Now, it doesn't look like much, but to him, this was the groundbreaking moment for him that changed his life. He realized that in this game, you could make your own pinball set and do whatever you wanted with it. Like all these bumpers here are customizable. All these flippers. Well, the flippers at the bottom, I think, are the same. But you could do whatever you want. You could make any model you could want. And you don't need to have the materials. You have a nearly infinite number of possibilities when you have this game. And it's not just with this game, it's with the computer itself, you realized. You could do anything you wanted and build models of anything. And that's what really set him off to be a game developer. But it wasn't just games that inspired him. like for the game Sim Earth, he was inspired by his readings on the Gaia hypothesis by James Lovelock, and how the world could be seen as a single organism, like a macroorganism composed of small parts. And for his game Sim Ant, he was inspired by this book called The Ants by Edward Wilson, who is known as, I believe the term is mycologist. I shouldn't mess with that, but he realized that there's a lot of potential for these dynamics that happen in these systems. And he also, for The Sims, originally he was inspired by a book he read called A Pattern Language by Christopher Alexander, which was about architecture and basically about house design. And he realized that there are certain patterns that players could have if they were to design their own house. And that was early on in development, but he kept reading, and he realized when he was reading Understanding Comics that there could be a lot of potential for abstraction and representation of social interaction if you just make it abstract. So that inspired why the Sims in The Sims speak Simlish and speak gibberish, because if you make the characters speak something that's not specific to a language, then players can interpret that as much as they will. Like, oh, he's angry at her now because he dropped the cake, and then they're getting into a fight now, or something like that. So anything can inspire your games. Sid Meier is also respected in this field for creating games like Civilization, Railroad Tycoon, Pirates, and all these were inspired by his readings as a child into historical events, and also from his explorations into board games. Railroad Tycoon itself was inspired by Avalon Hill's board game 1830, and then he was inspired to make Civilization from his knowledge of history and Railroad Tycoon's complex economic systems at play. So, but of course, you shouldn't just make a game to fit a theme. You should also make a game to fit the gameplay, which he did. And he's had some projects that didn't go through because he just wanted a theme, but these are the games that I've remembered because they have the gameplay to fit with. So try to learn from all the big artists, game makers, and filmmakers. Read their biographies, listen to their interviews, watch documentaries. See what inspires them and drives their creative vision, and see what advice they can offer you. So I quoted Daniel Cook last time, saying you should be promiscuous with your knowledge of programming languages. You could say that you are polyglot, in the sense that you're multilingual with different languages. But it shouldn't just be programming languages you have knowledge of. It should be all sorts of languages. You should have knowledge of the language of music, the knowledge of the language of stand-up comedy and cooking. If you're a musician, you learn all about rhythm, pacing, melody, harmony, counterpoint, reprise, different types of themes that can go on during a song. If you know stand-up comedy, you can know delivery, comic timing, storytelling. If you know cooking, you know how to make recipes that make sense, flavors that blend together, aftertaste, and you can even feed yourself after you've done a long programming session with them, which I'm sure a lot of you have just eaten tacos and Taco Bell and eaten Mountain Dew. Drank Mountain Dew, I should say. So learn a little bit of everything and be polyglot. So when it comes to being a samurai, you shouldn't just know how to wield the blade. You should know how the blade is forged. You should know the different, how the handle is made, the different parts of it, the material is made, even the glint from the sunlight it makes, and how that can help you in battle. And as a game maker, you shouldn't just know how to program gameplay. You should learn about animation, cinematography, sound design. All are important aspects to adding to the whole experience of a game. But for cinematography and music, they can express emotion inside a form such as movies or in games without words, and they can leave a lasting impression. Like this scene in Citizen Kane depicts Charles Foster Kane as he's an old man, and he's reflecting an infinite number of times, and they use deep focus in the shot, an innovative technique they use at the time to make sure all the shots of Kane in the mirrors was in focus. So that's important. And it can teach you lots of different things on how to make games if you just look at cinematography. To go back, you should also learn psychology. Psychology is incredibly relevant to games. If you've taken Psych 101, they've had something discussed called Skinner boxes. And here you see a rat inside a box with a response lever and a food dispenser. And they condition the rats through operant conditioning, not forcing it, but making it willing to perform an action over and over again. When they press the lever, sometimes it'll give a food pellet every time, or sometimes it'll be every 3 times. And that gets the rat to press the lever whenever it's hungry, or press it 3 times whenever it's hungry. But the interesting thing is, what happens when you make the response lever drop a food pellet at a random interval? And that is the basis for a lot of games out there. If you can reward the player through a random interval, through performing repetitive activity over and over again, you're going to see that they're going to be more conditioned to do that action over and over again, rather than if they were to do it over a predictable number of times. So that's the basis for a game like World of Warcraft, in case you didn't notice. They have random loot drops, and that's all I'll say about that. It's sort of like they're making us rats in a box. So, in that regard. But anyway, there's also in psychology something called A/B testing, where you show 3 different options to 3 different players, and over time you'll get statistics on which options are better than others. This is Wuga's game, and the difference in each shot is the invite button, and you can see that it's different in each one, and then there are different numbers next to each one. And these numbers represent the percentages of people who actually clicked on the invite button rather than continue playing their game. And you can see there's a noticeable difference. 11% more on the top choice versus 100%. 11% more on the top choice and 4% more on the bottom choice. So they went with the top choice. Because even if you're making a big game, 11% more people sharing their game and increasing virality is going to make a big difference. I said that you should know different things, but you should also know your field as well. You should know games. And you should know the classics of your field. And George Lucas was very much inspired by the movies he saw in the 50s. There was stuff like Flash Gordon, these space opera-like serials that were made back then. He was influenced by samurai films, spaghetti westerns. He was influenced by adventure serials. And these led directly into his movies, I should say, for Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you look at various videos online, you can see that even shot by shot in Star Wars, when Luke's in the Millennium Falcon and he's shooting down the TIE fighters, that scene is lifted shot for shot from a war movie in which fighter pilots are trying to shoot down other fighter pilots. And you can be influenced by the things that you value the most when you're a child. So that's important. Quentin Tarantino, for Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, he was very much influenced by the 80s Grindhouse movies. And these are big films that were inspired by previous films. And those films probably weren't even that good, but it just started the spark in them to make something that explored that genre and do something new. So you shouldn't just know other fields. You should also know the history of games as well. You should be influenced by all the big people, and you should know the big developers and the big people in your field, and It's going to be embarrassing if you go to an event like GDC and you're talking to a big famous person like Shigeru Miyamoto, but you don't even know what he looks like. So you're just saying, oh, I'm just going to ignore this person. I don't know what he's saying. He's speaking Japanese. But you should know who all the big players are for multiple reasons. So you should be able to list like 5 game developers that you admire on the fly. So I said last time that the trick to making interesting games is being an interesting person. And you might not think you're an interesting person right now, but everyone is. You'll be surprised. It's just that you might not be thinking about it in the right way. You can draw from movies and games and stuff like that, but as much as you have that, you can also draw from your deepest personal experiences. Experiences that only you have and no one else has had. And express things like sorrow and joy more than not just shooting stuff and clicking stuff. Try to express different emotions. So there are a few games that express this. This is a game called Dysphoria by Hannah Anthropy. It's an autobiographical game about her experience with being a transgendered woman who is going through hormone replacement surgery. And that's something that I can't say that I've done, but it's something that's still you can relate to, that feeling of isolation and being different. And it's a very human story that's not really about the gameplay or the mechanics. It's about the story that's been told. This next game is called Ether, and it's done by Edmund Millen. And it's not directly about certain topics, but a lot of it is implied through stories that are being told. It's about a boy who lives on a planet and he's very lonely. And he gets on a monster, and they go flying into space, and they want to help and meet other beings from other planets. And as he helps them, they don't even feel that much better, and they're just kind of torn with their feelings and anxieties. Sometimes they might say something like, at least no one can hurt me here, but even if they do help them, they don't feel that much better. And as he's helping them, the planet that he came from is getting smaller and smaller. And that sort of reflected his feelings as a child when he expressed all the anxieties he had as a child and put them into the game as different monsters. And how he felt that that where he lived was getting smaller and smaller as he confronted his anxieties. The point of that was that you can tell a whole story through an interactive medium, but it doesn't have to be about exciting gameplay. It could be about a touching story. And I've told you about these ways that you can make a game and be inspired by different people. But at the same time, you should be your own person. You should stand up away from the crowd. You have your own stories to tell, and you should make something that you like. And if you make something that just to appeal to other people, you might not like it. But if you make something that appeals to yourself, that you like, it's better to do that than to, I should say this better. It's better to try and make something that you like and hope other people like it than make something you hope other people will like and not like it yourself at all. So, after you come up with your idea, you should prototype it to see if it fits your vision. This is an image of the game Prototype. This is not what I mean at all, but it is a prototype game, so to speak. I just needed something to build the slides, but the point is that you should try to find the fun as soon as possible before you get really head deep into development. In film, when they're testing a new technology, they experiment with a short film called a proof of concept to show that the technology is feasible and that they can tell their story. In movies like 300, Sin City, and Sky Captain and World of Tomorrow, they have very distinct art styles that were never really done before, and they wouldn't have been worth getting started if they didn't test to make sure that they could get the right vision that they wanted. And same with Pixar. For Finding Nemo, the water needed to look like water and the fish needed to look like fish. If they didn't have that, then they couldn't tell this whole grand story about a father trying to find his son. You need to be able to know that you can do the story that you want to tell. And yeah. So you need to find the bare minimum it takes to get the ideas down. This is a prototype of a game called Braid, and clearly it's programmer's art. This would not be worthy of a retail release, but it's still got the ideas down. The basic concept of the game is that you have a time reversal mechanic, and he realized that if he could get that done and find some interesting facts about it, like find some interesting gameplay mechanics that would result from this new system, then it'd be worth making. So he started this before he made his full game. This took him a week to make, and the result was 3 years of work and contacting the artists and the musicians, and this is what it looks like in its current form. But he didn't need to impress anybody with his first prototype. He needed to make sure that he had a mechanic done. He needed to make sure that the game is worth pursuing and getting art for in the first place. So before anything else, make sure you have the mechanics down. Make sure you have the essence and core of your game down first. So testing is important when you're doing prototypes. This was a game he made called Oracle Billiards, where the player could see what would happen as a result of their shot each time they hit the balls, like in a game of pool. So he wanted to play with the idea of time manipulation, where the player could see ahead of time and then play it out. But this game was terrible. It was absolutely not what he envisioned at all. It wasn't interesting. But that didn't make a bad prototype. It was still a good prototype. It got the ideas going. You realized that, oh, what if I were to do something else with this time mechanic? What if I were to make some sort of time reversal mechanic? And it didn't take him long to make. He didn't even make the holes where the balls can go in. He just made the basics of the basics. He didn't have good graphics or anything. He just wanted to make sure that he had a good mechanic, and he wanted to see the consequences of that. And that really got the ball rolling, so to speak. I didn't even mean to do that. But, so, daring ideas are like chessmen who move forward. They may be beaten, but they might start a winning game. You have to start with very bold ideas and move forward and see what results from them. You have to make mistakes before you, what's the phrase? You have to break a few eggs in order to make an omelet, so to speak. So I just compared Goethe's quote to an omelet. So that's an accomplishment in itself. Anyway, so last time I ended with the remarks that what you do in your spare time determines who you are. Well, that's only true if you're a student. When you're an adult, what you do in your full time determines who you are. What you do as an occupation and what you do for a living determines your worth as a person. Or how you value your own time. I shouldn't say worth. But as much as we want to be able to reverse time like a grade and take back all our mistakes, we can't do that. We don't have that option. And that's just part of being human and living a meaningful life. You're going to have to live with your mistakes and take responsibility of your own time. And a lot of the time, you might find yourself doing things that are more interesting than what you're doing in your full time. That's what happens to a lot of people on the internet. I don't know if you guys heard of these shows, but there's Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series, Angry Video Game World, Nostalgia Critic, Mega 64. All of them were just fooling around, doing something that they thought was fun, just in their own time. And it became this sensation that people enjoyed. They shared in that joy that they had in making it. And it became a full-time occupation for them. It was something that they wanted to do, and they went and did it. And with the internet, made it possible to live off just random people clicking on their monitors and laughing. So with games, back in the 80s, people were making games in their garages and putting them in Ziploc bags and just going to developers and going to stores and just saying, here, take my Ziploc bag and put it on sale. See if we can make any money off of it. And we're back at that phase right now. So we have indie game developers that are making games in their own basements, basically. Marcus Passion, when he made Minecraft, he was just making something in his own spare time, and it became a full-time thing for him, and he's made millions of dollars. There are countless indie game developers out there right now that are trying to fulfill this dream. John Blow, Edmund McMillan, Derek Yu, and Terry Cavanaugh and Adam Salton. Like, the list goes on. But the point is that they went for it. You have to go for it if you really want it. And some people think that, oh, I can't take back my actions. I should live cautiously. I should plan to save something. I think the exact opposite. You can't live your life again, so you have to make the most of it. If you just play it safe, then you're not going for the things you really want. You're just appealing to your baser fears. You shouldn't live your life in fear. Bold mistakes are necessary lessons for living a full life. And a little bit of courage at the right time can make all the difference in the world. But as students, you're living on borrowed time right now. There are people providing for you, and people that are giving you the opportunity to go to school. But you have to be able to take control of your own life. You shouldn't depend on others. Eventually, you're going to have families of your own and people to care about it. You have to care about yourself. You have to think about that. And I don't want to prey on fear, but I know what I was afraid of. I was afraid of spending the rest of my life doing something I didn't believe in and just not enjoying what I was doing with my time to make a living. And then I would die. That's basically it. Like, that's all that would happen. Like, I would do it, wouldn't like it, and then I would die. And you don't want to live your life like that. And because I know I don't want it. But what got me out of that fear were some positive thoughts. I want to express myself creatively in a medium that's being explored and expanded upon, and be part of one of the latest generation of innovators in the new medium. I had this hope that I could somehow recapture this precious childhood memories, like myrmecologist or Wright. I could bring that joy that they brought to people and bring my joy to other people too. And there's hope that I could be a voice in the world, that I could make a difference, that I could make a dent in the universe and change it for the better in a way that it can never go back. So sometimes you might feel like you're just passing the time and wasting the days away. But you don't have to be. The trick to being an interesting designer is living an interesting life. And the trick to living an interesting life is doing something you want to do with your time. Okay, so if you want to achieve your dreams, stop wasting your time. Take steps toward it. Because every ticking second counts. You don't want to live your life in regret of what could have been. Do the things you want to do. And there are resources everywhere to learn about all the different things you want to do in the world. On the internet, at the library, at workshops, at conventions, meeting new people, and even school, even though that sounds kind of weird that you're supposed to learn something at school. But there's some classes that you might not want to take because you're afraid of, like, oh, the work's going to be too hard. Well, you can just sit in on the class and be really cheeky and not even be signed up and just take an empty chair and just learn for the sake of learning. You know, it doesn't have to stop when you get out of class. You could check back in at another class and keep learning, you know. That's how Steve Jobs learned about calligraphy, and that's why computers today have fonts that doesn't look terrible. And of course, everything I've said is merely only the wisdom I've accumulated. You shouldn't just use me as your sole source of inspiration. There's a world of inspiration out there. Learn from everything. Learn from everywhere.
don't just learn from you. And a day wasted is a tragedy. And we're given these opportunities to do something meaningful with our lives. From our family, from our friends, from our society, from this world and this universe being created. If you value your existence and your time on this earth, then why waste your time doing something you don't want to just because you're afraid of making mistakes? Your life is in your hands.
Be bold.
Make the most of it. Thank you for your time.